Welcome to our final re-release episode of Coal at Sunset, a Colorado town in transition. There are estimated to be more than 1,000 ghost towns in Colorado. Each one represents a failed economic transition. So for Craig, Colorado, the stakes are clear. The nearby coal plant and coal mines are closing by the end of the decade. Hundreds of well-paying jobs will be going away. And as we heard in our previous episode, similar towns have struggled to survive when they don't have adequate resources. Transitions need support, like government funding, economic development, and community investments. Fortunately, help is on the way.
Policy is my home territory. It's what I find most fulfilling in my career, being able to work on problem solving in the public sector.
Wade Buchanan is a longtime Colorado policy pro. He's served 3 previous governors in a variety of senior positions. He directed the State Energy Office and the State Department of Natural Resources. He ran a public policy think tank for 15 years. In other words, he knows his way around government. But with his graying hair, broad smile, and an easygoing demeanor, he's not what you'd expect from a bureaucrat. More like a friendly mountain guide. His Colorado roots run deep.
So I'm a 4th-generation Coloradan. Family came here back in the 1920s, 19 teens, so probably over 100 years ago. And eventually, after being in different places, settled in Boulder. I grew up in Boulder, but I've never really lived for any long period of time anywhere else, and don't think I would want to. Colorado is home. It's a very special place. It's a very unique place, and there's a lot of diversity in our own sort of way.
In 2019, Colorado passed its big climate action bill. That's the one that committed the state to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030 and 90% by 2050. Those new targets signaled the beginning of the end for coal-fired power plants, which emit more carbon dioxide than any other energy source. Here's Governor Jared Polis.
This transition means lower energy costs and savings for ratepayers, more renewable energy jobs. It means reduced air pollution. It's a bold step to protect the future of our planet and prepare Colorado to succeed in the future.
His administration also understood that the climate bill would have huge ramifications for towns like Craig. So that same spring, lawmakers passed another bill, creating a brand new Office of Just Transition to mitigate the impacts of coal closures.
But we also need to recognize the disruption caused to workers, families, and communities that are impacted by the private sector's turn away from coal. That's why I intend to work with utilities, including Tri-State and our new Office of Just Transition, to expand opportunities in renewable energy and help ensure that no worker and no community is left behind.
It was the first state-level office of its kind in the U.S., and it was a public commitment to helping Colorado towns plan for a successful post-coal future. But it still needed somebody to lead it, someone who could navigate the policy and politics of a complex issue. There weren't a lot of obvious fits, so the director role sat vacant for months.
They were actually having a challenge finding the right person for it.
Enter Wade Buchanan.
And I was feeling as though probably someone else could do my job in the governor's office better. And the attraction of a job that got to focus on a specific challenge was very appealing to me.
But it would be unlike any job Wade had ever held before.
It's an office of one.
That's right. Wade was the office's first and only employee. He didn't have a budget to hire anyone else. He didn't have much of a budget for anything, really. The office began its existence understaffed and underfunded.
We expected that we would be operating in a position of austerity for quite a while.
So there he was, with no money and no roadmap.
I started the job the first day of March in 2020. It was the same week that the first case of COVID was found in the state.
Oh, yeah, and a pandemic about to begin. Needless to say, this was going to be an uphill battle, and there was legitimate reason for skepticism. After all, wouldn't this just be repeating the same mistakes of the past? A bureaucratic office run by an outsider without any funding? Some in Craig asked, why should we get our hopes up about that? But Wade knew what he was getting into. He understood the broader forces at work.
At the global level and at the national level, this transition is all about moving from carbon-based fuels to cleaner and newer fuels. At the local level and at the individual level, it's not about that at all. And we all need to stop thinking that it is. It's really about a community being probably over-dependent on one employer for a large share of its economic stability and its economic well-being.
He's hopeful that this time, things can be different.
The economic transitions are always disruptive. And this one, this energy transition, is equally disruptive. There are always winners and there are always losers. But there probably doesn't have to be as many losers as there have been in the past. You know, the state has enough ghost towns. We have enough shuttered factories. I think our goal is to try to do the transition differently than it's been done in the past.
This is Coal at Sunset, a Colorado town in transition, presented by the Institute for Science and Policy at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. I'm your host, Kristen Uhlenbrock. I want to return to a question that we asked earlier in this series. What responsibility do we have to each other as Coloradans? What about as human beings? It's clear that communities in transition require support. And I think most of us would agree that someone should try to help coal workers. But who should that someone be? Private industry? Philanthropist? Individuals? The government? In creating the Office of Just Transition, state legislators cited a moral obligation to Craig. And it's true that the government often plays an outsized role. When they're firing on all cylinders, state offices like Wade's can pull big levers that small towns can't. They can help navigate bureaucratic mazes and find grant opportunities. They can coordinate resources across numerous agencies and divisions, and they can assist with long-term strategies as communities plan for their future. But will that help even be welcome? President Ronald Reagan had a famous saying that many still agree with.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Throughout this series, we've heard that rural communities are often skeptical of government assistance. They've been let down too many times in the past. Here's Colorado State Senator Bob Rankin.
Most of my constituents feel strongly about controlling their own destiny. They would rather make decisions than have the state or federal government do that for them. So that's an issue that I think a lot about and work on, putting control back in their hands, whether it's their school district or their fire department or local government.
We spoke with Senator Rankin earlier in this series. He represents Craig and much of Colorado's rural western slope. And he wasn't a fan of the Office of Just Transition when it was being considered in 2019.
I was extremely critical of the Just Transitions Office. I'll admit it. I actually went to the well of the Senate and said this bill is offensive. And what I meant by that is that title is quite lofty, isn't it? And it didn't have a nickel, not $1 in there to really help.
It didn't help that this bill was passed in conjunction with the Climate Action Bill. To some in Craig, it was like the legislature had amputated a limb and then offered them a Band-Aid.
People felt that they were being betrayed by their own government for reasons they did not understand.
So Wade had his work cut out for him. He had to convince Craig that the state government was on their side, that it would come through this time. that he would come through.
We have to deliver in a way that's in partnership with them, not showing up like, hey, we've got the answer for you. We've figured out your future in Denver or Washington, D.C., and here it is, and fall in line. I mean, I think there's a little bit of the concern that that's what might be happening. And certainly, as long as I have something to say about it, that's not at all what we're about, or I wouldn't have taken the job. In my interactions with, the governor and with others who are at the state level, that the legislators, that's not their intent either. But there's a long distance from intention to reality, and it involves, getting in at the ground, getting to know the people, rolling up your sleeves.
He wanted to start building relationships and repairing that trust. So he went out on the road.
My first week on the job, we were up in Moffat County and in Routt County for some very intense meetings with the citizenry in general, but also workers and business sector and community leaders and the governmental folks. I remember sitting at the table with 3 coal miners and their wives. And one of the wives, who was so straightforward and so clear, said, I'm not going to believe anything you say until you come back. And that stuck with me. And it really underlined what we have to do is deliver.
But the timing couldn't have been worse. COVID-19 put a freeze on travel. The pandemic prevented Wade from returning to the Western Slope for the rest of 2020. Like so many, Wade found himself working from home. The crucial in-person components of his job were stalled out. He couldn't help but feel like valuable days and weeks were ticking away. All that summer, Wade tried to identify the elements of other failed transitions so that he could avoid making the same mistakes. He studied the rise and fall of other Colorado towns that we've mentioned previously, like Kremling and Pueblo. As he thought about how those examples might apply to Craig, one important principle jumped out at him.
Build on your strengths. Don't pretend you're a community that you're not, or that you're not capable of being. And that sounds a little pejorative. I don't mean it that way, but every community has its strengths, and no town in Colorado is going to have an ocean view. So don't plan on that, right? Don't put yourself in a place in the future where the loss of one business becomes such a huge challenge if you can avoid it.
Wade wanted to start listening, so he reached out virtually to Jennifer Holloway. She's the executive director of the Craig Chamber of Commerce, whom you may remember from previous episodes. She thinks Craig is already in a strong position to attract small businesses.
Craig is a great place to start a business. Everything is very low cost here right now. So if you're in Colorado and you're trying to start a business, we're going to beat your prices probably as far as buying a warehouse or purchasing land or anything like that. I think we're going to see more small entrepreneurial startups with very creative industries, maybe something that you can ship all over the world, or sell a bunch in Steamboat.
But a few small startups alone aren't going to cut it. Wade and Jennifer talked bluntly about the tidal wave of economic disruption headed Craig's way. Moffat County stands to lose over $150 million in assessed property tax value once the coal plant and coal mines close.
Every community around the country that faces the closure of a coal-fired power plant faces some significant tax base loss. That means the schools, that means the streets, that means the ability of the community to be an ongoing concern and to plan for its future. I mean, it's a really significant challenge, especially if the numbers are as big as they're going to be in Moffat County.
Jennifer told Wade some of the other things she hoped his office could provide for a community grappling with change.
So what resources would be great would be alternative workforce placement training, education on options. I mean, I think we're going to need some real mental health and career counseling. We need to holistically help each of these individuals and families.
Oh, and one more thing.
Money. Give us a bunch of money, please. I'll help us spend it.
Wade promised he'd do what he could. And in theory, it all sounds so simple. Pour money and resources into towns in transition, and they'll be okay. But I got the sense from Jennifer that there's more to it than that. The end of coal is still a raw emotional topic in Craig. For the town to move forward and get the closure it needs, it might need more than just numbers on a spreadsheet.
And a big thing is that if there's a way to show empathy instead of vilifying us, like I feel like the coal miners, and this is all over the country, we're not the only coal mine town going through this, but we're not the bad guys just because we were in an industry that the nation needed at that time, that was the best industry at the time. It was the way to make electricity. And now all of a sudden, it's not all of a sudden, okay, but it's finally here, this change that we've been avoiding. Tell us thanks. Can Denver send us a big card? Say, hey, thanks for all this work you've done for this electricity. We know you're changing. We know your town's going through a hard times, and we understand.
We asked earlier about taking responsibility for helping coal communities, because Wade can't do it alone. Tri-State, the electric utility company that's closing the plant and mines in Craig, certainly bears some of that obligation. CEO Dwayne Hiley, who spoke with us in our first episode, knows that his utility can't just up and leave without offering some kind of financial help. He recently oversaw another coal plant closure in New Mexico.
We had to really take a hard look at the coal facility we operated in New Mexico called the Escalante plant near Grants, New Mexico. And that was a couple hundred employees, a very significant impact, again, because that is an area where there aren't really other employers. They saw the writing on the wall. They knew that coal's not going to run forever, and they had made plans. So we were able to plug into their plans and say, well, we'll provide funding. And so we provided $5 million for their transition plan, which really helped kickstart it.
Craig is hoping for a similar level of community investment from Tri-State over the next decade. And so far, there's been some. The company has already offered to pay for education and retraining for any coal employee who wants to change careers. And in the fall of 2020, Tri-State installed a new $250,000 indoor agriculture facility at the Moffat County High School.
We call it a farm in a box. I mean, it's kind of a wacky thing, but it's growing plants indoors with special lighting, complete control of all the variables. And if you think about high mountain or high desert mountain areas, you can't grow in the winter, but this can eliminate food deserts. And you could take the downtown closed storefront or, an old Walmart or, some building that, what do you do with it? And if you could deploy indoor ag and you could grow fresh produce year round, and now you're not having to truck this in from who knows where, California or whatever, and a place that really didn't have any fresh produce can have it right there and have some jobs, seems like a win-win.
Projects like that are a start, Dwayne says. He knows that many expect him to do more. He hopes he'll be able to. The decision to close the coal facilities in Craig still weighs on him because he knows what can happen.
So I can say I've seen both sides of it and know there's a way out. I mean, there's better tools at our disposal today through the Office of Just Transition that Colorado has created. There's other grant money that wouldn't have been available to us decades ago. So Wade is so enthusiastic in terms of the potential for what we're trying to do at Craig. And he's ready, willing, and able to help. And it just could use a little more money. I'd say if I could give Wade a gift, I'd give him, $100 million. And that would be, I think, a big help. So, he's a great resource for that community in terms of his enthusiasm for the transition.
In the chaos of early 2020, the odds of Wade coming across that huge windfall seemed low. The pandemic had sent the U.S. economy into freefall. Budget shortfalls loomed. There was no choice for Wade but to keep operating on a shoestring. The steps that he and Jennifer and others in Craig had come up with, economic diversification, attracting new businesses, investing in infrastructure, all looked really good on paper. But for now, the plan was only that, paper. The uncertainty of it all still nagged at Wade. He wondered if all of his efforts would be enough when it really came down to it.
We're talking about events that are still years away, and the idea that, we know exactly what's going to happen and we can write a plan and say, here's our final plan for something that's going to happen 5, 6, 7 years from now, just a ridiculous thoughts. We have to pay attention to quality, the quality of the jobs, the quality of the benefits, the nature of the work that's coming into the community. And if we're just too simplistic about it, we could really screw this thing up.
There's another big question hanging over the work that Wade is doing. What is a just transition? What is fair? And who gets to decide? After all, there are only so many taxpayer dollars to go around. There's a devil's advocate case to be made that when some sectors like coal begin to fade away, that's just free market economics at work. Wade has considered these questions too, and he rejects the framing.
This is not a zero-sum game. It is not about pitting different people against and their interests against one another. It's about a significant transition that's happening in communities and to families, and that's happening for bigger reasons. And how are we as a society going to recognize our obligation to not have the communities turn into ghost towns? And how are we going to think about a different way of transitioning as a society?
We've heard throughout this series that coal jobs are well-paying jobs. And it's true. They typically pay around $100,000 a year and don't require a bachelor's degree. Coal workers will also have access to education and career retraining resources through Tri-State. There's an inherent tension in the state, helping out those who are pretty well off relative to their neighbors. But Wade says the need is broader than that.
The reason for the buy-in broadly is in part to ensure that everyone benefits from this process. And if you come at it from a point of view of a zero-sum game, then I think you're going to really limit your imagination. It's not at all certainly what my office is about. I don't think it's what the communities are thinking about. We are going to work with the individuals who get laid off. They are mid-career. Some of them are close to retirement. They have some of the best jobs in the community, true. They also, as a result, are important to that community's economy. I don't think anybody should begrudge that people who work that hard are paid well and have the kind of benefits everybody should have. I think we should begrudge the fact that others don't. And so that's the challenge in the communities. Can we do this? Can we take care of these folks who, through no fault of their own, are having their careers deeply, deeply disrupted?
Ultimately, this question isn't going away. It's a significant consideration in the energy transition. For Wade, his focus remains on the workers.
The disequity in our society is not the fault of these miners and not the fault of the power plant workers, nor are they responsible for why we're in the predicament we are that is driving the necessity of this transition. They're just hard workers who've done what they've been asked to do, and they've powered a great deal of our prosperity. And I do think we owe them, good faith. And while we're at it, we owe good faith to other folks who've been left behind. And we can do both those things.
We can see now that there's another transition taking place here in the state. There seems to be a new mindset in Colorado government about how to support workers in disappearing industries. It's a more creative approach to community input and engagement. The fact that Wade's office even exists, and that he and others are grappling with these tough questions around Craig, is a sign that we're all thinking about the issues in a different way. The Office of Just Transition survived its challenging second year, pandemic and all. Wade published his draft roadmap on the final day of 2020, outlining a detailed series of recommendations for Craig. It prioritized new business development, infrastructure investments, and direct grant assistance. Overall, the plan was well received, even by former critics like Senator Rankin.
So what's evolved since is they wrote a plan. It's nice. It's more than just a plan. It's actually a checklist of local initiatives. So that's what I have been very supportive of.
And fortunately, Colorado's budget had also found its footing. Federal COVID-19 stimulus dollars had started to roll in. The state of the economy wasn't as dire as feared. Things were starting to look up for actually funding the Office of Just Transition. Then, in the spring of 2021, Senator Rankin co-sponsored a bipartisan bill with an infusion of cash for Wade.
We ended up with a bill that is giving the office $15 million over the next 2 years, which will be a wonderful foundational capacity for us to lay the groundwork.
I actually lobbied hard for that bill. I wanted to put some money, I wanted to get some money actually funneled to the locals to help with their plan, with their initiatives. And my discussions with the Just Transition Office were very good. I mean, Wade said, all over the fact that initiatives should come from the locals. That's the ones that will work. Lofty retraining you can't retrain coal workers to work in a souvenir shop, So we had those discussions. I wanted to just block grant that money directly to that region. But that was hard to do. I couldn't get that done. So I was happy to help put $15 million through the Just Transition Office. That bill reads, it says, coal community transition. So I feel like that is going to be funneled directly to that local set of initiatives that you will see.
The bill passed overwhelmingly. The Office of Just Transition finally had a budget. And now, Wade won't be going it alone anymore.
In part because of those added resources, we're also able to hire. So we are now a mighty office of 2 people, and we'll be, in another month or two, a mighty office of about 4 people.
He hopes that more significant resources will eventually arrive from Washington, D.C. The Biden administration is prioritizing infrastructure investments in cleaner energy.
Can we find a way from the federal level to help in the short term? Because these numbers get too big for the state to handle, frankly. Can the federal government help over a transition period, maybe on a sliding scale, net that out in a way that is more manageable for the communities?
And it's true. The energy transition is very much a part of the conversation in our nation's capital right now. As we record this in fall of 2021, Congress is debating a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure package that includes resources for transitioning coal communities. Its chances of passage, however, are uncertain. But no matter what ends up happening in Washington, in Colorado, funding the Office of Just Transition was a watershed moment. Legislators had fulfilled their initial promise not to abandon towns like Craig. As for Wade himself, after months and months of struggle, dare I say, he was feeling something like hope.
Yeah, I do think I'm optimistic about it. It may be absolutely essential that this transition happen from a climate point of view. We may not have a choice about that, but we do have a choice about how the communities and the workers experience it. And that is a different way of approaching a major economic disruption than often has been the case in the past. And that's what's exciting about this job. Our state is dotted with ghost towns, and they're beautiful and picturesque now, 100 years after they folded. But they're all testaments to failed transitions. And we have an opportunity to get ahead of the curve and do a transition that isn't a failure, but a success. And that's what's exciting to me. It is possible. It's not easy, but it's worth trying. And if we succeed, it's kind of hard to imagine many things more important.
As I record in late 2021, nearly 2 years have passed since Tri-State's fateful decision to close its coal plant and coal mines in Craig, Colorado. By the end of the decade, burning coal for electricity here will be a thing of the past. What will Craig look like by then? After all, this series is only a snapshot. The transition will take a long time to unfold. We don't know how Craig's story will end. Progress won't be a straight line. But I can share now that I'm hopeful. When I started this series, I didn't know what I'd find. I met thoughtful, engaged, active members of this community who are starting their businesses and investing their time and money in the region. They believe passionately in their future, even when they disagree with each other. And I believe in this town's resiliency. The end of coal could be downright liberating for Craig. Many of my questions about the transition have already been answered. But there still was one thing I wanted to ask many of those we interviewed. What are they hoping for by 2030? What do they want to see their home become next? I decided to head back where we started this series. At the Trapper coal mine just south of town, I climbed up on a rocky bluff overlooking the site. We are on a higher elevation piece of land. Looking back, we are probably maybe a half mile, it looks like, or so, maybe upwards of a mile away from the Craig plant and probably the main offices of the Trapper mine. We're up kind of on a plateau almost because it has been scraped over and flattened for all the heavy trucks, and we're getting ready to go look over into a really deep dugout pit where they are currently mining for coal. In the mine, massive hauler trucks and heavy cranes are still digging away at the bottom of the deep coal seam. But up above, on the far ridge, the landscape doesn't look like a mine at all. Amber-colored grasses and native shrubs cover the hillside. Deer and elk frequently come here to graze. It's surreal to see the contrast. The incredible thing? That land where the deer and elk roam, it was already mined many years ago. Over the years, Trapper has revegetated thousands of acres through a process called reclamation.
So we are required by state and federal regulations and law to reclaim our site through reclamation and put it back approximately the way it was before. So the landscape, the surface of the land out here will look very much like it did before we dug the great big open hole.
You may remember Graham Roberts from our very first episode. He's the environmental supervisor here at Trapper, and he spoke about his family's long history at this mine. He'll be overseeing the reclamation process after the mine's final years of operation.
We reseed all of that, the revegetation of the site, to put it back into whatever the particular use you might be using. Some mine sites might be used for a shopping mall in the future. In our case here at Trapper, this will all be rangeland for cattle grazing, wildlife, just open space.
Graham marvels at how well the landscape can recover, that it can eventually return to nature.
And I've spent, the majority of my career now here at this site, so yeah, I know it well, and you want to see it succeed. You have a personal responsibility for what's going on out there, and if there's issues, we address them, we take care of them, because we want to make it the most successful site you can, especially for its post-mining use.
Graham and I are joined by Jenny Brannon. She's the director of Colorado's Department of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety. Her job is to ensure that when any coal mine in the state closes, the owner cleans it up. As we drive, she tells us that mine operators didn't always act responsibly in the past.
When I was born in the 60s, there were no mining laws. So people came in, they made a mess, and they left. There was nothing stopping them from doing whatever they wanted to do. It was truly the Wild West. And so people do confuse, they conflate in their minds pre-law sites with active sites.
She's describing older abandoned mines, where the mine operator just left. Waste was never cleaned up. The holes were never filled back in. They were just desolate moonscapes and ugly reminders of the nearby communities left behind. But that all changed after new federal regulation passed in 1977. Today, Jenny's office requires mine operators like Tri-State to post a multi-million-dollar bond up front. Essentially, an IOU note that they'll carry out the reclamation when they're finished. At Trapper, the workers do some of that work as they go, reclaiming areas that have already been fully mined. Completing what remains will likely extend well beyond 2030.
After the mine closes, it's a minimum of 10 years. We're going to be regulating that site. We're going to be on that site on a regular basis. We're going to oversee the grading, the seeding, and it's not like once it's regraded and seeded, we say, okay, we'll just hope for the best here, and we leave. No. We need to see that those plants take. We need to see them grow. We need to see that noxious weeds aren't coming up, that we have the right mix that we want for that area, and usually for the wildlife in that area.
Graham is optimistic, given how well the ecosystem has fared in the areas that have already been replanted.
In the 70s, there were other surface mines possibly in the early stages of planning, and the real fear was that these operations and the power plant and all this activity would drive the wildlife completely away. And what we found in pretty quick turnaround as we started reclaiming the site and opening things up and progressing through our mining sequence here is that was entirely untrue. Entirely untrue. And it's been the same case for all of the mines here in Northwest Colorado. The reclamation actually became a magnet because the grazing resource there, that habitat we're putting back, is so appealing, especially to the larger herbivores like deer and elk, that they actually come to it to feed. They use it as wintering grounds. They use it as their calving grounds.
I didn't expect to go to a coal mine and end up talking so much about wildlife. But here we are.
The Columbian sharp-tailed grouse, they're a small ground-dwelling bird, a little bit smaller than a sage grouse. The seed mix we're putting back, the habitat we're reestablishing, was ideal for these sharp-tailed grouse. And they actually came back to the site, which a lot of people didn't think would happen. Grouse establish what is called a lek, and that is their mating ground. So in the spring, they come to the leks, and they dance and prance around to attract a mate. Columbian sharp-tailed grouse have a very animated little dance and unique sounds.
The sound of those birds is unmistakable.
They're funny. It would be a slow and then a fast beat is what it would be, because they tamp their feet so fast you can hardly catch it on film. and it sounds like a snare drum, just, and then they have a clucking, popping sound they can do, and they kind of shuffle their feathers, and they just stop after they do that. And they stand there a little bit with themselves all puffed up and wings out and tail up, and then they do it again, and you can actually hear it for miles at times. It's such a commotion when you have 10, 15, 20 birds all together doing this little dance. So yeah, they're quite entertaining.
It's heartening to know that the ground we're standing on right now will be taken care of. That wildlife can thrive here. That in 50 years or 500 years, you might never have known there was a coal mine here at all. The idea of resiliency and a path to healing fits with so much of what we've heard during our time here in Craig. Graham will be one of the last to leave Trapper, as he stays on to oversee the reclamation. Most of his colleagues will be gone by then. Eventually, once Jenny's department gives the all clear, he'll move on too. He's not quite sure what he'll do next. He only knows things will be different by then.
It's nice to know, we have time, people have time to prepare what they want to do. A lot of the guys who are staying on, they're staying here because they want to stay, finish it out. And beyond final production, there's a time period there of the final closure of the mine, the reclamation process. So it's kind of nice to know that'll continue a little while. But as I said, it'll be a big change here for our community.
The power station was one of the very first things we saw when we drove into Craig. I wondered what it would look like in 2030. I suppose it could be demolished and turned into scrap metal. It could possibly just be abandoned. But Tri-State CEO Dwayne Hiley has a more hopeful outcome in mind.
When I talk to employees, I get, mixed responses. Some of them are really disappointed to not see this future that they've worked multiple generations in. And there's another group that come in really excited, and they're like, I don't know what the future is, but I'm excited to be part of it. And we're hoping to provide hope through the new technologies that we're bringing in.
He's talking specifically about hydrogen, the element found at the very top of the periodic table. Hydrogen is a potent conduit for energy, which is why it makes up about 75% of the matter in our universe. In chemistry terms, it's the H in H2O. And it can be harnessed to create cleaner forms of electricity. Increasingly, we have the technology to produce hydrogen at scale with a variety of sources like natural gas, biomass, or solar power, just to name a few. Each method has its own pros and cons in terms of cost, feasibility, and net carbon emissions. But when you already have access to water and solar power, like the Craig Station does, that's a pretty good start.
That's what we want to explore at Craig, and we've filed an application with the Department of Energy under their request for information on where would be the best place to put a hydrogen demonstration project. So we've submitted the name of the Craig plant for consideration, and it has so many things in favor of it. First of all, some of the cleanest water that's readily available, and plenty of it. It doesn't take lots of water to make hydrogen, but you need really clean water. And so you don't have to spend a lot of money cleaning it up. It's already there. And we already have that allocation because coal plants use lots and lots of water. So we won't be using nearly as much water in a hydrogen process. It has the advantage of being at high elevation with good sunshine, a very good place for solar. We've got a giant substation there, so there's a place to put energy that's ready to go.
Hydrogen fits in neatly with much of what the Craig Station already does well.
We've got a workforce that is already trained on how to deal with high pressure piping and how to operate heavy equipment safely and how to handle large amounts of energy. So many times people talk about a retiring plant and their proposal is we're going to retrain those plant workers. And they talk about things like training them to be software people or, that's not necessarily why they went into that job to begin with. They like people that work in the plants tend to have a lot of pride of workmanship. They want to work on heavy equipment. They want to make things operate. And when you think about redeploying them into a different kind of work, that's not always what they want. They want to do that kind of work they're already doing. In the case of repurposing a plant to operate on a different fuel, that's totally complementary to what they already do. You can still use welders, millwrights, machinists. All those same people can have a future. And so we're super excited about this.
Ultimately, we should think about coal the same way we think about other technologies. And technologies eventually get upgraded. It's exciting to imagine that innovation happening right here, right when it's needed the most.
Right now, the cost of hydrogen is very high compared to conventional fuels, but we're hopeful. One of our local Colorado renowned study people has done some work that has illustrated that Craig, Colorado likely is the lowest cost place in the entire United States to make green hydrogen. It has the highest potential for clean renewables. Again, high elevation lets the solar work better, and a great substation, a great workforce, low-cost water inputs. So if any place can do hydrogen, Craig, Colorado can do hydrogen. The dream would be that we would be partnered with the state to create an energy research collaboratory at Craig and partnered with maybe Colorado State University. I just think there's an opportunity for us to come together and demonstrate, and why not in Colorado, demonstrate some of these leading technologies. We don't know which ones are going to be the winners, but we need to be moving to demonstration phase with these different ones. So we would love for that to be happening at Craig.
But not every question about the future of Craig Station has been answered yet. Water remains a big concern in the region. Tri-State owns significant water rights along the Yampa River. The company hasn't announced what will become of those rights if the station shifts its production or closes.
This river is the lifeblood of our valley, and it is shrinking, and the water is barely coming through.
Jennifer Holloway, Executive Director of the Craig Chamber of Commerce.
But it's still one of the last mostly wild rivers, and I worry about the environment and this water and how we're going to survive if there's no water, and how this water is on everybody's radar, in particular with Tri-State owning water rights.
What I do know about water at Craig is that the amount of water it takes to create hydrogen and energy is far less than the amount of water that would be consumed in a coal plant's normal steam process. So you evaporate lots and lots of water in cooling a coal plant to keep it operating. My understanding is the amount of water needed for hydrogen electrolysis to create an equivalent amount of energy is a fraction of that. But, that water represents an enormous opportunity that there's so much interest in.
How much water use is too much? After all, the circumstances have changed dramatically in the West. We've heard people like Tom Kleinschnitz tell us about the ongoing drought. Towns like Craig have to think carefully about how their water gets allocated. A hydrogen plant might be worth it. Other options might not be.
My biggest fear is that those water rights will be sold to the highest bidder, when we really don't have enough water in the river right now, and we need that water for our agriculture and our towns to have water for the city. I mean, what's going to happen with that? We have to have a real serious conversation and the right minds on this situation. And I know Tri-State has a huge burden with deciding what to do with those water rights, and how do we allocate those when we're done with them. I just hope that we can look at the big picture. I hope that Tri-State can look at the big picture, and that those water rights any water that's left in the Yampa River can be used for environmental reasons, for things that will be long-term to keep the sustainability of our animals and of our natural world. That's what has to happen.
Our phone rings a lot with people asking, what are you going to do with that water? And knowing that the plant is closing, even if we go to the hydrogen production, there should still be surplus water available for other uses. Now, people proposed a number of things. Some say put it back in the Yampa, which is great. Some say we've got other uses for it. And those questions have not yet been answered.
Climate change is the common thread in many of the hard questions that Craig faces. And while climate still may not be the driving issue here, that it is elsewhere in Colorado and the U.S., I heard a surprisingly enthusiastic embrace of renewable energy that might have been unthinkable in a coal town even a decade ago. Over and over, I encountered a willingness to collaborate on new ideas around energy. That gives me hope that we're getting somewhere. Just look at Tri-State. The utility has pledged to slash its greenhouse gas emissions in Colorado 80% by 2030 relative to 2005 levels. That would exceed state targets. Eventually, it wants to get its entire statewide energy production to net zero carbon emissions. Other Colorado utilities, like Xcel Energy, have made similar pledges. The landscape is evolving quickly. But even as the head of a large utility, Dwayne doesn't quite know how the energy transition will play out yet. Like so many others that we've spoken with in this series, he's navigating the uncertain road to change.
For the last 2 years, we've moved in a very rapid way to turn into the energy transition and to support that strongly with a lot of activities at the co-op. And we're only maybe halfway there in my mind. We've got about 2 years in, and we got another 2 years to really clearly define and answer some of those questions like, what are you really going to do in 2030? How are you going to keep this grid reliable as you make this transition? And we don't have all those answers yet. I think we can get in a comfortable spot in 2 years. So it's like climbing a mountain in my mind. And any of you that hiked a 14er know it's a lot of work, and you kind of walk and walk and walk and walk and walk, and you trudge and you trudge, and it seems like you're not really getting anywhere, and you kind of see the peak, and then you don't see the peak. And so then, but every once in a while you look over your shoulder and you go, wow, look what we've done. Because it doesn't feel like you're moving and it's kind of just slow, but you look back and you say, yeah, we've really gotten up here. We can see a lot. And so I think that's where we are, is there's maybe some false summits and we don't know the trail exactly. We know where the summit generally is. We know how we got to go up.
What will the Craig Station look like in a decade? Tim Osborne, the plant manager, hopes it can be transformed rather than torn down.
If there's something that we could do here with hydrogen, that's very cool. And I guess I look at the hope side of it more than anything. I think that we're pretty resilient as a community. We've been through boom and bust before the plant was being built, 1974. There wasn't, the industry wasn't here. It was a small town. And there's potential that it could go back to a similar small town. But I think there's a lot of stuff happening in the community that's going to be beneficial to look for economic drivers.
His outlook on Craig is short and sweet.
It looks different. Doesn't mean the whole place is just going to dry up, shrivel up, and go away.
During our stay in Craig, it was possible to forget, at times, about all the politics and controversy and existential challenges surrounding the energy transition, our changing climate, and what we do about all of it. We sat outside on hot summer nights and played trivia at the downtown brewery. We watched horses in the field at sunset. All around us, there were hopeful signs of a post-coal future. Real estate prices have been rising. Buyers have started purchasing lots that sat vacant for years. The town is moving forward on plans for a new recreation center. The Chamber of Commerce celebrated its 75th anniversary with a well-attended gala. Moffat County Tourism unveiled its new marketing slogan, Colorado's Great Northwest. Kirsty McPherson, whom we heard from in our very first episode, is now entering year 3 of operating her 518 wine bar in downtown Craig. She's part of the up-and-coming generation, and she can picture success.
My vision for Craig in 2030, if I had a magic wand and I could do all the things that make sense or the things that we're working on or any of those pieces, is our downtown, there wouldn't be any empty buildings. Everything would have a place and a space, and the buildings would also all look like there's something important in them, whether it be shops, restaurants, real estate, but no empty buildings.
Kirsty and her partner Sean, who works at the Trapper Coal Mine, are already planning new investments.
Sean and a partner are going to be opening up a distillery, and that is going to be placed in the downtown area someplace. And the goal of that is to grow on par with a lot of the other distilleries around the country and in this area, where we would be providing employment for some of these different individuals as well. And that correlates right back into engineering and transferable skills. And I mean, being able to also show that, because the two partners are, one's at the power plant and one is within the coal mine, to show people what else they could potentially be doing.
That economic diversification is exactly what Wade Buchanan, director of the Colorado Office of Just Transition, hopes to see. He's not usually one for making grand predictions, but he let himself peek ahead just a little.
2030, well, I'll be 70 years old. I hope I'm retired. That will be success for me. Hope I can afford to retire. 2030 in Craig, well, it goes back to, I think we were very deliberate in our action plan, saying here are our goals. And the goals are, for the community, more good paying jobs, broader property tax base, more economic diversity in the community. For the workers, it's a very similar thing, that they were able to achieve a transition to some future of work that is desirable to them and hasn't caused them great economic disruption, where they're able to sustain something like the lifestyle they had. I'm hoping that that by 2030, we will see those goals being achieved. 2030, we won't by any stretch be done.
There are still some reflexive hesitancies in Craig, mostly around new people coming to town. Jennifer at the Chamber knows that might never completely go away.
We're isolationists in a way. We're independent. We have a lot of open space, and we're used to seeing the same people everywhere we go, and we're cool with that. How do you balance that with needing an economy, needing their money, but not wanting people here? And that's tough, because we have to face that, we have to talk about that, and we have to figure out what to do, because the reality is people are coming anyways.
But Craig might end up benefiting from the post-COVID rise in remote work. As workers look beyond the Front Range for more affordable places to put down roots, why not northwestern Colorado? And that trend might be something Craig can embrace.
I don't think people mind as much if people are going to come here and live and become part of the community. They have remote jobs. That's okay. You're still going to go to our grocery store. Your kids are still going to go to the school. You probably still participate in our community.
When people do come to Craig for the very first time, they'll find a town learning how to move beyond what's defined it for so long. Here's Kirsty again.
Opportunity is around every single corner. I mean, if you want to create anything here, this is a spot to do it. We have a lower cost of wage. We have lower cost of living. We have all these things that make this a great spot to try an opportunity. I will also be the first to say that if you can make a business work in Craig, you can make it work literally anywhere else.
Wade shares her general optimism, even as he offers a gentle word of caution. Change needs to be sustainable. Even a decade might not be long enough to know if all this effort paid off.
I think in 2030, if you can point to Craig or the other communities and see that those things are happening, then I think we're succeeding. And then come back in 2040 and see what kind of communities they are. And I think frankly, it's not to scare anybody, but I think it's 2040 that is the best measure, because we'll be as far away on the other side of the closures as we are right now, be a little further away than we are right now. And we'll see how the whole trajectory worked and whether the solutions we identified and the businesses we brought in and the diversification that we brought had staying power. I mean, if they're still there, if the community's still thriving, if it's no longer in a situation where one business closure is going to upend the whole community, then we will have done our work.
I said earlier that I came away hopeful from my time here. And that's not because decisions like Tri-States don't have very real human impacts. They do. But I also know that change is not unmanageable. Driving back to Denver from Craig, with the 3 power plant stacks in the rearview mirror, I saw 6 electric car charging ports at the gas station on the edge of town. If that's not a metaphor, I don't know what is. Coal doesn't have to define this place anymore. The new ideas and new technologies we've heard about can power the future. And that's exciting.
Whatever it's named at in history books in 100 years, this is the next industrial revolution in some sort of way.
History can move quickly. We've seen how fast industries can rise and fall. And the world keeps going. Craig is facing many of the same things that each of us confronts in our own ways. We all have to grapple with uncertainty about what comes next. There's a lot of friction in our energy transition. Our individual motivations are complicated and contradictory at times. As humans, we tend to favor the path of least resistance. But to address big challenges, we have to be brave enough to steer into that discomfort. We must find ways to reduce that friction and bridge divides. That takes time. It takes outreach. It takes listening. I come back to that word, resilience. Craig has lots of it. They also have ideas. They have passion. They have help. So I'm hopeful because I know people care. I hope all of us can look at this complex world we're navigating together with new perspective as we try to honor our common humanity.
Stay tuned for our new miniseries, Coal at Sunset, Still Burning.
Coal at Sunset was created by the Institute for Science and Policy, a project of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, produced in partnership with House of Pod. I'm your host, Kristen Eulenbrock. This show was written by Trent Noss. Our producer is Juliette Luini. Our executive producers are Trent Noss and me, Kristen Eulenbrock. Our field recorders are Nicole Delaney and Juliette Luini. Our story editor is Katherine Jaffe. Sound design and mastering by Jason Patton. Graphic design by Nicole Dodlinger. Web design by Carlos Mosqueda. Special thanks to George Sparks and the town of Craig, Colorado. To hear bonus clips and find additional resources, visit coleatsunset.org.